welcome back. If you are returning, I appreciate you all so very much. And I just want to thank God for another day. We're going to get started. I missed yesterday. I apologize for not coming on yesterday, but I just did not feel good and I could not get myself up, in time yesterday to do this. So here I am today, and I'm just praying that you all are doing well. And let's get started with our word of prayer and get on into the reading. We are in Leviticus chapter. So we're in Leviticus chapter 13, and I was hoping to finish Leviticus today, but it'll probably be another couple days. But we're going to go ahead and get started with a quick word of prayer, and then we're going to get right into it. So, Lord, I thank you for this day, God. I thank you, Lord, for waking us all up this morning. I thank you for everyone who's joined this live or who is joining this live or watching this replay. And I just pray, God, that you touch them, bless their lives, Lord. If there's something that they're seeking, Lord, I pray that you bless them, Lord. If it's answers, God, if it's healing, if it's, certain requests that they have up before you, Lord, I pray, Lord, that you bless them, God. Send them the answers to their prayers, God. Speak to them and direct them and guide them, Lord. And I just thank you, God. I thank you for another day to glorify you. I thank you for another chance to praise you and worship you, God. And Lord, I just thank you for all that you've done, all that you're doing, and all that you're going to do. And I ask all these things in Jesus' name. Thank God and amen. And we are going to go ahead and get started. And again, for the last couple of weeks, I'm going to read as much as I can. I'm going to sit here as long as I can. I do have a doctor's appointment tomorrow to get checked up because this has gone on long enough. So yeah, just pray for me as I pray for you guys, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So again, Leviticus 13. So the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, when a person has a swelling, a scab, or a shiny spot on their skin, and it becomes an infection of skin disease on their skin, they will be brought to the priest, either to Aaron or one of his sons. The priest will examine the infection on the skin. If hair in the infected area has turned white and the infection appears to be deeper than the skin, then it is an infection of skin disease. Once the priest sees this, he will declare the person unclean. But if the shiny spot on the skin is white and does not appear to be deeper than the skin and the hair has not turned white, the priest will quarantine the infected person for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will again examine the infection. If he sees that it has remained the same, the infection has not spread on the skin, the priest will quarantine the person for 7 more days. On the 7th day, the priest will examine it again. If the infection has faded and has not spread over the skin, the priest will declare the person clean. It is just a rash. The person must wash their clothes, then they will be clean again. But if the rash continues to spread over the skin after they appeared before the priest for purification, they must again show themselves to the priest. If the priest sees that the rash has spread over the skin, the priest will declare the person unclean. It is a case of skin disease. Whenever someone has an infection of skin disease, they will be brought to the priest. If the priest sees that there is white swelling on the skin, it has turned the hair white, and there is a patch of raw flesh on the swelling or in the swelling, then it is a case of chronic skin disease on their skin. The priest will declare the person unclean. The priest will not quarantine such persons, because they are already unclean. But if the skin disease continues to break out so that the disease covers all of the infected person's skin from head to toe, as far as the priest can tell, then the priest will make an examination. If the skin disease has covered the person's whole body, The priest will declare the infected person clean. The person has turned entirely white, he is clean. But as soon as raw flesh appears in the swelling, they will be unclean. When the priest sees raw flesh, he will declare a person unclean. Raw flesh is unclean. It is a case of skin disease. But if raw flesh turns white again, the person will go back to the priest. The priest will examine it. If the infection is turned white, the priest will declare the infected person clean. At that point, the person is clean. Whenever someone has a boil on their skin, it heals, and in place of the boil there is a white swelling or reddish white shiny spot. It must be shown to the priest. If the priest sees that it appears to be lower than the skin and its hair has turned white, the priest will declare the person unclean. It is an infection of the skin. It is an infection of skin disease that is broken out in the boil. But if the priest examines it and there is no white hair in it, it is not lower than the skin, and it is faded, the priest will quarantine the person 7 days. If it continues to spread over the skin, the priest will declare the person unclean. It is an infection. But if the shiny spot remains where it was and does not spread, it is just a scar from the boil. The priest will declare the person clean. Whenever there is a burn on someone's skin and the raw patch of the burn becomes a reddish white or white shiny spot, the priest will examine it. If the hair has turned white in the shiny spot and it appears to be deeper than the skin, it is a case of skin disease that is broken out in the burn. The priest will declare the person unclean. It is an infection of skin disease. But if the priest examines it and there was no white hair in the shiny spot, it is not lower than the skin, and it is faded, the priest will quarantine the person 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will again examine it. If it is continued to spread over the skin, the priest will declare the person unclean. It is an infection of skin disease. But if the shiny spot remains where it was, has not spread over the skin, and is faded, it was just swelling from the burn. The priest will declare the person clean, because it is just a scar from the burn. Whenever a man or woman has an infection, whether on the head or in the beard, the priest will examine it. If it appears to be deeper than the skin and there is thin yellow hair in it, the priest will declare the person unclean. It is a case of scabies, a skin disease of head or beard. When the priest examines the scabies infection, if it does not appear to be deeper than the skin, but there is no black hair in it, the priest will quarantine the person with the scabies infection for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will examine the infection again. If the scabies has not spread, there is no yellow hair in it, and it does not appear to be deeper than the skin, the person will shave the area without shaving the scabies. The priest will then quarantine that person another 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will again examine the scabies. If it has not spread over the skin and does not appear to be deeper than the skin, the priest will declare the person clean. They must wash their clothes, then they will be clean again. But if the scabies continues to spread over the skin after the person's purification, the priest must examine it again. If the scabies has spread over the skin at all, the priest does not need to look for the yellow hair. The person is unclean. But if the priest sees that the scabies has remained the same and black hair has grown in it, the scabies have healed. The person is clean. The priest will declare them to be so. Whenever a man or woman has many white shiny spots on their skin, if the priest sees that there are faded white shiny spots on the skin of the body, it is just a rash that has broken out on the skin. The person is clean. If someone loses their hair, they are bald, but they are clean. If the hair is lost at the sides of the forehead, the person has a receding hairline, but they are clean. But whenever there is a reddish white infection on the bald spot or in the receding hairline, it is a case of skin disease breaking out there. The priest must examine it. If the swelling of the infection is reddish white in the bald spot or receding hairline and resembles skin disease on the body, excuse me, the person is afflicted with skin disease. They are unclean. The priest must declare them unclean on account of the head infection. Anyone with an infection of skin disease must wear torn clothes, dishevel their hair, cover their upper lip, and shout out, "Unclean, unclean." They will be unclean as long as they are infected. They are unclean. They must live alone outside the camp. Whenever there is a skin infection of skin disease on clothing, on wool or linen clothing, in the weaving of the linen or wool, or on a skin or skin item, and the infection is greenish or reddish on the clothing, the weaving, or the skin of the skin item, it is an infection of skin disease and must be shown to the priest. The priest will examine the infection and quarantine the infected item 7 days. On the 7th day, he will examine the infection again. If the infection is spread on the clothing, the weaving, or the skin, whatever it is used for, the infection is a case of infectious skin disease. The item is unclean. The priest will burn the clothing, the weaving of the wool or linen, or whatever skin item in which the infection was found, because it is an infectious skin disease. It must be burned with fire. But if the priest sees that the infection has not spread on the clothing, the weaving, or any skin item, the priest will order that the infected piece be washed, and he will quarantine it for another 7 days. After it has been washed, if the priest sees that the infection has not changed its appearance, even though the infection has not spread, it is unclean. You must burn it with fire. It is a fungus, whether it is on the inside or the outside. But if after it is washed, the priest sees that the infection has faded, he will tear the infected part of the cloth, out of the cloth, the weaving, or the skin. If it appears again in the clothing, the weaving, or any item of skin, it is starting to break out. You must burn the infected item with fire, but if the infection disappears from the cloth, the weaving, or any other item of skin that you washed, it must be washed again, then it will be clean. This concludes the instruction about the infection of skin disease in a woolen or linen cloth, weaving, or any skin item, in order to declare whether it is clean or unclean. All right. The Lord said to Moses, "This will be the instruction for anyone with skin disease at the time of purification. When it has been reported to the priest, he will go outside the camp. If the priest sees that the person afflicted with skin disease has been healed of the infection, the priest will order that 2 birds, wild and clean, and cedar wood, crimson yarn, and hyssop be brought for the person who needs purification. The priest will order that 1 bird be slaughtered over fresh water in a pottery jar. He will then take the other wild bird along with the cedar wood, crimson yarn, and hyssop, and will dip all of it into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered over the fresh water. He will sprinkle the person who needs purification from skin disease 7 times and declare that they are clean. Then the priest will release the wild bird into the countryside. The person who needs purification will then wash their clothes, shave off all of their hair, and bathe in water. At that point, they will be clean. After that, they can return to the camp, but they must live outside their tent for 7 days. On the 7th day, the person must shave off all their hair again, head, beard, and eyebrows, everything. They must wash their clothes and bathe in water. Then they will be clean again. On the 8th day, that person must take 2 flawless male sheep, 1 flawless 1-year-old ewe, a grain offering of 3/10 an ephah of choice flour mixed with oil, and 1 log of oil. The priest performing the purification will place these and the person needing purification before the Lord at the meeting tent's entrance. The priest will take one of the male sheep and present it as a compensation offering along with the log of oil, and will lift them as an uplifted offering before the Lord. The priest will slaughter the sheep at the same place where the purification offering and the entirely burned offering are slaughtered, in the holy area. The compensation offering, like the purification offering, belongs to the priest. It is most holy. The priest will take some of the blood from the compensation offering, and he will put it on the right earlobe, the right thumb, and the right big toe of the person needing purification. Then the priest will take some of the log of oil and pour it into his left palm. The priest will then dip his right finger into the oil and sprinkle some of it with his finger 7 times before the Lord. Then the priest will put some of the oil that is left on his hand on the right earlobe, right thumb, and right big toe of the person needing purification. This oil will be placed on top of the blood of the compensation offering. The priest will put whatever is left of the oil in his hand on the head of the person needing purification. In this way, the priest will make reconciliation for the person before the Lord. The priest will then perform the purification offering and make reconciliation for the person needing purification from their uncleanness. After that, the entirely burned offering will be slaughtered. The priest will offer up the entirely burned offering and the grain offering on the altar. In this way, the priest will make reconciliation for the person, and they will be clean again. Now, if the person is poor and cannot afford these things, they can bring 1 male sheep as a compensation offering to be lifted up in order to make reconciliation for them. A grain offering of 1/10 of an ephah of choice flour mixed with oil, a log of oil, and 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, whatever they can afford. One as a purification offering and the other as an entirely burned offering. On the 8th day they must bring these items for their purification to the priests at the meeting tent's entrance before the Lord. The priest will then take the male sheep for the compensation offering and the log of oil, and will lift them as an uplifted offering before the Lord. The priest will slaughter the sheep for the compensation offering and will take some of its blood and put it on the right earlobe, the right thumb, and the right big toe of the person needing purification. The priest will pour some of the oil into his left palm. Next, the priest will sprinkle some of the oil 7 times before the Lord on the right earlobe, the right thumb, and the right big toe of the person needing purification, on top of the same places as the blood of the compensation offering. The priest will put whatever is left of the oil in his hand on the head of the person needing purification to make reconciliation for them before the Lord. The person will then offer one of the turtle doves or pigeons, whatever they can afford, one as a purification offering and the other as an entirely burned offering along with the grain offering. In this way, the priest will make reconciliation before the Lord for the person needing purification. This is the instruction concerning those who have an infection of skin disease but who cannot afford the normal means of purification. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When you enter the land of Canaan, which I am giving you as a possession, and I put an infection of skin disease on a house in the land you possess, the homeowner must come and tell the priest, 'I think some sort of infection is in my house.' The priest will order that the house be emptied before he comes to examine it, so that nothing else in the house will become unclean. After that, the priest will come to examine the house. If he examines the infection and the infection is on the walls of the house, consists of greenish or reddish depressions which appear to be deeper than the surface of the wall, the priest will exit the house, go to the front door, and quarantine the house for 7 days. On the 7th day, the priest will return. If he finds that the infection has spread over the walls of the house, the priest will order the stones in which the infection is found to be pulled out and discarded outside the city in an unclean area. The inside of the house will be scraped on all sides, and the plaster that has been scraped off must be dumped outside the city in an unclean area. Just a second. Then different stones will be used in place of the first ones, and a new coating will be used to replaster the house. If the infection breaks out again in the house after the stones have been pulled and the house scraped and replastered, the priest will return. If he finds that the infection is spread throughout the house, it is a case of infectious skin disease in the house. The house is unclean. The house must be destroyed. Its stones, wood, and all the plaster in the house. All of it must be taken outside the city to an unclean area. Anyone who enters the house during the entire period when it is quarantined will be unclean until evening. Oh, excuse me. Anyone who lies down in the house must wash their clothes. Anyone who eats in the house must also wash their clothes. But if the priest arrives and finds that the infection has not spread after the house was replastered, the priest will declare the house clean because the infection has been healed. To cleanse the house, the priest will take 2 birds, cedar wood, crimson yarn, and hyssop. He will slaughter 1 bird over fresh water in a pottery jar. He will then take the cedar wood, hyssop, and crimson yarn along with the wild bird and will dip all of this into the fresh water and into the blood of the bird that was slaughtered. He will then sprinkle the house 7 times. In this way, the priest will cleanse the house with the blood of the bird, the fresh water, the wild bird, the cedar wood, the hyssop, and the crimson yarn. Then he will release the wild bird outside the city into the countryside. In this way, he will make reconciliation for the house, and it will be clean. This concludes the instruction concerning every infection of skin disease for scabies, for skin disease on clothing or in houses, and for swelling scabs or shiny spots in order to determine when it is unclean or clean. This concludes the instruction concerning skin disease. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Speak to the Israelites and say to them, whenever a man has a genital emission, the emission is unclean. This is the nature of the uncleanness brought about by his emission, regardless of whether his genital organs allows his emission to flow or blocks the flow, it is unclean to him. Any bed on which someone with an emission lies will be unclean, and in any object on which that person sits will be unclean. Anyone who touches such a bed must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. Anyone who sits on something that one with the emission also sat on must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. Anyone who touches the body of the one with the emission must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. If the one with the emission spits on a person, the clean person must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. Every saddle on which that person with the emission rode will be unclean. Anyone who touches anything that has been under such a person will be unclean until evening. Anyone who carries such items must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. If the one with the emission touches someone without first rinsing their hands with water, the person must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. Any pottery that the one with the emission touches must be broken, and any wooden tool must be rinsed with water. When the man with the emission is cleansed of his emission, he will count off 7 days for his purification. He must wash his clothes and bathe his body in running water, and then he will be clean again. On the 8th day, he will take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons, and come before the Lord to the meeting tent's entrance, and give these to the priest. The priest will offer them, one as a purification offering and the other as an entirely burned offering. In this way, the priest will make reconciliation for him before the Lord because of his emission. If it is an emission of semen, then the man must bathe his whole body in water and will be unclean until evening. Any clothing or skin on which there is an emission of semen must be washed in water and will be unclean until evening. If a man lies with a woman and has an emission of semen, both of them must bathe in water and will be unclean until evening. Whenever a woman has a discharge of blood that is her normal bodily discharge, she will be unclean due to her menstruation for 7 days. Anyone who touches her will be unclean until evening. Anything on which she lies or sits during her menstruation will be unclean. Anyone who touches her bed must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. Anyone who touches anything on which she has sat must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. Whenever anyone touches something, whether it was on the bed or where she was sitting, they will be unclean until evening. If a man has sexual intercourse with her and her menstruation gets on him, he will be unclean for 7 days. Any bed he lies in will be unclean. Whenever a woman has a bloody discharge for a long time, which is not during her menstrual her menstrual period, and whenever she has a discharge beyond her menstrual period, the duration of her unclean discharge will be like the period of her menstruation. She will be unclean. Any bed she lies on during the discharge should be treated like the bed she uses during her menstruation, and any object she sits on will be unclean as during her menstruation. Anyone who touches these things will be unclean. They must wash their clothes, bathe in water, and will be unclean until evening. When the woman is cleansed of her discharge, she will count off 7 days. After that, she will be clean again. On the eighth day, she will take 2 turtle doves or 2 pigeons and bring them to the priest. At the meeting tent's entrance, the priest will perform a purification offering with one, an entirely burnt offering with the other. In this way, the priest will make reconciliation for her before the Lord because of her unclean discharge. You must separate the Israelites from their uncleanness so that they don't die on account of it, by making my dwelling unclean, which is in their midst. This concludes the instruction concerning those with discharges, men with emissions of semen that make them unclean, women during their menstruation, men or women with discharges, and men who have had sexual intercourse with an unclean woman. And that is it for today, guys. We ended on chapter 16, and I will, the Lord willing, be back tomorrow at 6 a.m. Central Standard Time. Or if you missed it or want to go back and listen to the previous chapters or the previous books or me reading them, they are on my YouTube channel. And you can find all of them there from Genesis up until today. I believe I've only missed one day so far. Yesterday was the only day that I've missed, so I think this is day 20. This is day 21 or 22. Can't remember. But thank you so much for joining me. And again, if you haven't already, please be sure to like, comment, follow, subscribe, do all the things so you're notified when I upload or when I'm live again. And again, check me out over on YouTube because these are all posted over there. So after I finish here, I upload them over there so you can follow along over there. And that is it for today, guys. I pray you all have an amazingly blessed day. And until next time, be blessed and be the reason someone smiles. Bye.